All right, welcome back, Sundar Pichai. I'm making this video just for you. I want to issue the apology to you directly. I am so sorry for going against science by talking about biblical themes with the pandemic because, in the last 72 hours or so, I've probably had about 15 videos taken down, over half of them having to do with the teaching of the mark of the beast in Revelation and how it is seemingly playing out in the time of this pandemic. And I'd encourage everybody out there who has my book, Number Games 9/11 to Coronavirus, just toss it in the trash can because Google, the ultimate authority on truth, has let us be known that there's no way in any way that you can even attempt to doubt the science and the legitimacy of the pandemic and how it's being handled by the authorities. Everything is misinformation. Even stuff that I really thought wasn't misinformation. I thought 666 was a real teaching from the Bible, but according to Google, it's false. It's amazing. It's amazing. You would think the company that's known for collecting data and information would be able to verify that what I'm saying is in fact true, but somehow it's false, and I guess it's because it contests with science, even though it really doesn't. But I'm just trying to understand. I'm trying to apologize for what I'm being punished for, even though I don't exactly understand it, and nowhere is it ever made clear from Google, why these things are taken down. But ultimately, they're the authority. They are greater than thou, and the apology is obviously deserved. There's nothing wrong with the censorship. The fault is all with me for documenting that the coronavirus pandemic was simulated by an organization made up of the Johns Hopkins and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Pfizer and Moderna and big banks, and the same parties now benefiting off the pandemic. It's just, it's just all a coincidence that they simulated the coronavirus pandemic 1 month before the outbreak in Wuhan, the day the military World Games began in Wuhan. And also, they simulated the same type of thing May 15th, 2018 with Clade X, exactly 666 days before the pandemic was declared, March 11, 2020. Somehow they simulated these things that are so similar to what we're now living out. But again, to bring this up is medical misinformation. I don't know where the medical advice is in any of that, but somehow, Google, who has taken down so much content of so many, including yours truly, somehow we are spreading medical misinformation, even though we're not talking about anything medical related. So, again, I mean, even though this might kind of be a confusing and jumbled beginning, I just want to make clear the rest of the way of why people like me are so wrong to doubt, the mainstream and what's promoted as science. And understand, I went to school and got straight A's in all my science classes. I have let me tell you a real story about my own life from 8th grade middle school. Remember Brocious, the third baseman who blew it for the Yankees in the World Series? His brother was actually a teacher at my middle school. His brother was Scott Brocious. They grew up in southwestern Washington State. And Mr. Brocious was a lot like his brother, very athletic. He was the hunk. One of the stories of Mr. Brocious is he got the young, cute PE teacher pregnant, which was a real story from the Mr. Brocious files. But Mr. Brocious was what they would call a hunk. Blonde hair, blue eyes, big muscles, energetic guy. But he was one of our science teachers. And in 8th grade, I was in Mrs. Schultz's class, and he just came busting into the room, and he said, "Where's Zach? Where's Zach at?" And I didn't know what was going on. And he was so excited. He let me know I was the first person ever that got 100% on that exam. The first person in all the years he'd been teaching, because it was his most difficult exam of the year. And again, I'm only telling this to let you know that I was a very good student and a very observant student, and a lot of teachers like me because I asked really good questions, like something that happened around that same time, the discovery of Dolly the sheep. An announcement that was made on the 53rd day of the year, February 22nd, 97. That was just before my 14th birthday. And my big thing in school at that moment was, wait a minute, if they can clone a sheep, a mammal, they should be able to clone other mammals, and we're part of the mammal species. So can they clone us? And none of my teachers had an answer for that. Well, now, because I ask questions, thanks to Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages, I can now look back and understand why that story was released on the 53rd day of that year. It's because in the language of letters and numbers, well, that's all part of this conspiracy theory nonsense that I'm actually apologizing for, because obviously this is a coincidence, sheep equals 53. So we get the news of Dolly the sheep, the first cloned mammal on the 53rd day in 97. Anyway. Continuing with that story, Mr. Brocious interrupted Miss Schultz's class, right? Miss Schultz's class. That was my core class. It was English and history. And it was only months after that I was kicked out of Mrs. Schultz's class. She had to have me removed from her class. And do you know why? It just shows you what a disgraceful American I was from a young age. We were made to dress up in a costume and give a presentation in front of the class of a leader from history that we admired and respected. And I thought it was silly. I felt like I was too old. I was 13 going on 30 back then. I thought I was too old to be having to dress up in costumes like a little kid in my mind at the time and give a presentation on some historical figure like Benjamin Franklin, right? So what I decided to do was dress up as Fidel Castro and talk about why he was the great leader against the evil America. Because you guys had to understand, at that age, I was sick of most things by that age. To give you an insight into my life, from about the time I probably turned age 11 or so, maybe until I was 14, I always had a straightaway answer anytime somebody would ask me a question that gets asked so much of younger people. Hey, Zach, what do you want to be when you grow up? You know what I'd always respond? I'd look at them and I'd say, an assassin. And they would just be frozen. And, the reason I would say that is because I was already kind of fed up with a lot of humanity and just how dumb and incompetent people were. You guys can say what you want about me, but I'm telling you the truth. When I was growing up, I ran circles around everybody in academics and in athletics. I was like, what's wrong with everybody else? And I was also younger than almost everybody else. I was like the young end of the spectrum. You know how when you get put in school, some people, they'll turn, 6 in that September that kindergarten starts. They enter as 5 and they turn 6, right? And other people are entering 5 and they just turned 5 just days before the school year started. So they're almost a year younger. I was like that. So many people it seemed like most of my friends growing up were between 6 and 9 months older than me, most of the group. And that's because so many people are born in the spring and I was born, in July. But, anyway, I'm just putting this out there as part of the apology because I'm just showing you how from a young age I had too much ego and started to think everything was a conspiracy and obviously there was nothing going on at all. It's just a coincidence that the sheep story, the first cloned sheep came on the 53rd day of the year. And, most of us were raised with Bibles and Jesus teaches us to be sheep, not goats. Be a good sheep, be a good sheep. And what do we know thanks to George Orwell's Animal Farm about the sheep? We know a lot more. There's not really such a thing as a good sheep, But that's what America wants, right? Good sheep, which is what I'm going to turn into because Google has commanded it, and obviously they are the authority on all things. So anyhow, let's just go through all the things that I've clearly been wrong about, and I just want to apologize for even more. Symptoms may appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. People with these symptoms may have COVID-19. So, again, nearly 2 years ago now, I pointed out that these were just typical symptoms of what we call flu season. Colder weather, people seem to get sicker. It's more taxing on the immune system. But, this was the science, you guys, and obviously it was very serious. Because just listen to how serious it is. Fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, headache, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, or even diarrhea. And if you're that one ballet dancer, loss of legs. But they didn't put that on their list, you notice. But again, I mean, I guess it was medical misinformation to point out that those are the same symptoms that people have dealt with through all of humanity in the season of sickness, you know? So I want to apologize for I guess making that misstatement, because apparently it wasn't. Apparently nobody suffered from any of those things until COVID-19, you know, when everything became COVID. So apologize, Sundar, for the medical misinformation. I guess I was wrong. Those were all new symptoms in humanity, right? Starting in 2020. That's when it began, right? March 11th, 2020. That must be what we're supposed to say. We can't point out anything that might have been true. Who can remember anyway in the United States amnesia, right? Oh, man. I don't know if I can remember past March 11th, 2020. But anyway, I want to apologize for that, and, you know, again, apologizing for even bringing up the news on the 53rd day of the year of Dolly. And I want to apologize for questioning Stephen Hawking, too. For those of you guys who are new here, one of the first videos I ever made was about, you know, how Stephen Hawking is the powers that shouldn't be just laughing so hysterically that they're spitting all over our faces, right in our faces, and somehow we're not noticing. But I was probably wrong about that, too. Because, again, just go back and watch an old documentary clip like this. And please don't take down the video for copyright. I just want to show some more credible sources, you know, some more professional videos, bringing you real scientific truth, like the wisdom of Stephen Hawking, a man who had a device invented for him so that he could write books as big as this by pressing one button repeatedly. And again, just so no one thinks I'm putting out any misinformation, I'm even going to show part of the documentary where they talk about the one-button machine invented so Stephen Hawking could, you know, crank out the books the way he did. Anyhow, let me play this documentary right here. Dr. Stephen Hawking in 1977. This is the year he really started to emerge on the scene as a international mind of scientific genius, promoted as one of the greatest minds of the 20th and 21st centuries. Stephen Hawking, in his own words. Here we go. Well, plus the narrators.
Black holes have gripped the imagination of a young generation of theorists like these at Cambridge University.
Experience with equations in that form. So.
As ideas are stretched to the limit, the acknowledged leader in black hole theory is Stephen Hawking. He and another British theorist, Roger Penrose, laid down the basic principles 10 years ago. They said the black hole would possess at its center an even stranger object. All the matter of a star collapsed to a geometric point, a singularity where gravity crushes particles out of existence.
Just in case you can't hear Stephen Hawking behind the narrator, because obviously the narrator's voice is more important than the greatest mind, you know, of his time. But in case you couldn't hear it, I'll just repeat what he said. So, anyhow, just listen to the translator. It's actually easier to understand, but in case the microphone didn't pack that up, I wanted to bring it to you. Again, one more time.
Oh, you would like me to draw a cylinder on the
Grave physical handicap.
Man, come on, man. Oh, you would like me to draw a cylinder? I'm sorry, you guys. This is an apology. Sometimes I'm hard to understand, but still more clear than Stephen Hawking. Here we go.
Makes Stephen Hawking's work all the more remarkable. For 13 years since his student days, he's fought a wasting disease of nerve and muscle. When his wife Jane married him, he wasn't expected to live very long. Now they've 2 children, Lucy and Robert. No self-pity for Hawking. With a physical handicap, he says, you can't afford any psychological ones. And although the gentle gravity of the planet Earth confines him to a wheelchair, in his mind, he masters the overwhelming gravity of a black hole.
The Big Bang is like a black hole explosion, but on a much larger scale. By finding out how a black hole creates matter, we may discover how the Big Bang created all the matter in the universe. The singularity of the Big Bang seems to be a frontier beyond which we cannot go. Yet we can't.
And again, you guys, this has been before. This is in 1977, before, the computer invention came along where he could just pound on one button to write out all of his thoughts and put out, 25 books as big as this. So, again, you guys, I want to apologize for doubting any of this. And if you think my laughter is rude, I'm actually just laughing at the old me who didn't believe this before, actually. So, don't be confused about anything I'm doing here. I'm just trying to make up for all the things I've been wrong about because, again, what else would Google ask of me? Here we go.
Help asking what lies beyond the Big Bang. Why does the universe exist at all? My son Robert is always asking questions. Why this? Why that? Every child does. It's what raises it.
I used to even doubt the thought that Stephen Hawking could impregnate a woman. What a fool I must have been. Here we go.
From being cavemen. On one view, we are just weak, feeble creatures at the mercy of the forces of nature. When we discover the laws which govern these forces, we rise above them and become masters of the universe.
Okay. So again, we're just getting started on the apologies. There's many more I have. And before we watch the next bit on the invention of Stephen Hawking's one-button computer that allowed him to talk through a computer and punch out book after book, I want to know where I can get one of these. Man, it'd make I'll tell you what, this book I'm holding up is one I wrote myself, and actually this big old thing I've been holding up that doesn't have a cover is also my first book, which is massive. And I'm just thinking, God, why didn't I know about the one button push that just gets it all done for you, just reads every last thought in your mind? Why don't we all have one of these? Here I am doubting the science, missing out on the best invention there was. I just got to find out where it's for sale. Anyhow, with regards to the British, I got to bring up one more time, Piltdown Man, another scientific... I don't know how to cover this one, Google, because science itself admitted it was a fraud, but for 41 years it was the first proof of evolution. It was the very first proof of evolution. So... again, science can never be wrong, so I don't know if we should even acknowledge the scientific fraud part. But maybe I can explain what actually happened. Let me see. There it is. So the Piltdown Man, which is now referred to as a hoax, which is a word Google doesn't allow because there's no such thing as a hoax or a conspiracy. But this thing that Wikipedia accidentally calls a hoax, it's just after 41 years they didn't need to use it anymore. But the Piltdown hoax, as Wikipedia writes, apologies, is prominent for two reasons. The attention it generated around the subject of human evolution and the length of time, 41 years, that elapsed from its alleged initial discovery to its definitive exposure as a composite forgery. So... again, it was used as the first proof of evolution, but then after 41 years, they said it was no longer necessary. It wasn't legitimate anymore. And again, in Gematria, which I'm apologizing for, because obviously it's just this, quacky conspiracy theory that Manly P. Hall wrote about decades before I was here. But again, he only gives you two ciphers, and they're the alphabetic order and the alphabetic order with the rules of numerology, and he says the more important cipher is the alphabetic order with numerology, which is where Piltdown equals 41, like how the scientific hoax, or, things you should call it other than that, but the thing that lasted for 41 years, right? Just a coincidence, right? Just like the sheep news making it on the 53rd day of the year. Neil Alden Armstrong, 201, first man to walk on the moon. Moon mission lands on the 201st day of the year. All of these things are just quackery, crankism. All these derogatory terms, that I've been subjected to over the years, and obviously deservedly, because... everything I'm showing is obviously false. And with regards to the other cipher, 113, it's probably just a coincidence that the practice of letters and numbers is historically a Jewish Kabbalistic practice coming from Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. And, they got that text, the old Talmud, where Bava Kama 113a says it's okay to lie to certain groups of people, It's weird how mainstream, dishonest, perverted, not true, and Gematria, they all equal 113. And, go figure that Stephen William Hawking also equals 113. Perverted. Having been corrupted or distorted from its original course, meaning, or state. I mean, that's a definition that fits to Stephen Hawking. As a young man, he didn't have his disability. What happened to him? He was growing up in the era of lobotomies. What did they do to that guy? I'm not doubting that, obviously I'm not doubting him apologizing, but I'm not doubting that he was an even smarter man as a young man. But then what happened to him? And what was he by the time he became an international celebrity? Here, let's celebrate science some more. Here's the documentary clip on how Stephen Hawking, how they made it so that his mind could essentially be read through a computer, or so it seemed. Here we go.
Yet if, as I hope, basic science becomes part of general awareness, what now appear as the paradoxes of quantum theory will seem as just common sense to our children's children.
Stephen Hawking wrote over 25 books, continued to teach at Cambridge University, appeared across popular TV shows, and gave us the most comprehensive understanding of cosmology. How did he manage that despite his degenerative condition of ALS? Through different computer programs.
Come on, man. Come on. Look how they just... Why did they put this clip in here so quickly and they didn't even read it out loud? Come on, man. Oh, man.
How did he manage that despite his degenerative condition of ALS? Through different computer programs that helped him communicate. One such program called Elocutor was developed by two Indian engineers, Dr. Arun Mehta and Vikram Krishna. Here is their story.
My name is Arun Mehta. I wrote Elocutor for Professor Stephen Hawking, which allows a person who is severely disabled to type and speak using a single button. What happened was that when he had come to India, my colleague Vikram Krishna met him in Bombay, and that's how this work started.
I met him, and it turned out that he wasn't this forbidding figure at all. He was just a fun guy, and he loved to make jokes, and he had a serious problem which needed serious attention. And it became so important to be able to be part of developing a technology.
Okay. Somebody out there is thinking, well, I could imagine how there could be one button and you go through a bunch of options to get the letter you want and the space and the abbreviation mark. Okay. Imagine how long it would take to do that, to go through the alphabet to get the letter you wanted. You got to hit it 25 times to get a Y, 20 for T, 19 for S, all the S's in the alphabet. Then what? If you screw up and hit the wrong letter, you got to cycle through 40 more things to get backspace, right? This guy's pumping out book after book that are this big, right? At his one letter typing machine. Black hole. I mean, come on, man. Obviously, I was wrong. And I'm acting out that old behavior right now to show you how wrong I was for even thinking this way, because obviously you could do that and it would just take extreme dedication. And Dr. Hawking was clearly that, right? Talking about the important topics of our times like black holes. Talk about a place for a mind suck. A lot of you guys are probably turning off the video so you can go back to watching the story of small talk and brainwashing, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Gabby Petito, small talk, Gabby. Talk, Petito Small, Brian reshuffling a brain, Brian laundry, wash the laundry. I'm getting off topic. It's part of the apology, though, somehow, some way. I know my apology makes about as much sense as the Google policies. And again, just going on right down the line, we're going to have to play this Wired video. And if Wired takes down my video for copyright, then that's too bad that Wired's such a pussy. Whoops, let me apologize for saying that too. Just I get tired of these people. These big publications, so many times where I've tried to respond to their videos, they end up filing a copyright strike and having my video taken down. It's like, why can't I? Shouldn't that bring more attention to your video? Why can't I debate back? We're going to see if we can do it with the Wired video. Oh yeah, just Stephen Hawking. He died on Pi Day in history. He died 65 days after his birthday. Stephen Hawking, 65. We covered it back then, 2018. And, that's the day supposedly that Einstein was born. And what's really interesting about this, and again, I have to apologize for showing you, these are the kind of things I used to believe in. But you see how geometry is 108? Albert Einstein died on the 108th day of the year, April 18th. And in geometry, you learn a lot about pi. And pi is 3.14. That's why they call March 14th Pi Day. It's been called that since 1988. That happens to be the year Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time came out, 88. But March 14th, the day Hawking died, the day Einstein was born, and Einstein himself died on the 108th day of the year, geometry is 108. If you run the alphabetic order in reverse, geometry is still 108. There's not a lot of words that are the same forwards and backwards. In geometry, an important concept within it is symmetry. So the word geometry has symmetry in Gematria, which means geometry in language. And again, these are the things that I taught about in my videos in the past that have been taken down for medical misinformation. So again, I'm only presenting it to apologize for how, just quacky and senseless it all is. But if you use the alphabetic order, what's called Simple English Gematria, the most simple cipher, if you write out 360, the degrees in a circle, you get 227. And that's interesting because if you divide 22 by 7, you get pi. It's the mathematical shorthand of pi. And 360 degrees are the degrees of a circle. And pi is that magical number that relates so well with the measurements of circles that you learned about in geometry class. And this practice of coding numbers into words means geometry in language. It's called Gematria. But if you write out 22 divided by 7, it equals 314. Like pi is 3.14, like March 14th is Pi Day. And, magically, these scientists, these great scientific minds of the same century, that they share this date, birth date and death date. And if you were growing up in my era, I was 5 years old when Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time came out. But growing up in that period of being in school, those were names that we heard all the time. Einstein, Stephen Hawking. These are the great scientific minds quoted in our textbooks. And it's just funny that they seemingly both lived and died by the numbers, It reminds that for all of history, for almost all of history up until the very recent, there were the 7 classical planets, which the 7 days of the week are named after. And in more recent science, there were additional planets discovered. Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Pluto discovered the same year that Disney released the cartoon character Pluto, 1930. And, science even kind of makes a joke about it, how, it does look like Pluto's face is in the common illustration of Pluto. But the one joke that most people don't realize is those 3 most recent planets, Pluto has now been removed from the list, but notice they got it up to 9, and 9 represents completion in numerology. But the most recent planet discoveries, the ones that are more distant than Saturn, Saturn's the last that can be seen with the naked eye, the planets that came after that, the more recent discoveries, they were all discovered with mathematical equations. And it's funny that Nikola Tesla, who's considered this great scientific mind, there's all sorts of theories about Tesla and what was really going on. But you can look up a real thing about Tesla is this quote about, the invasion of mathematics into science. And it's not to say that mathematics is wrong, but just that he said mathematics was taking over science. Scientific discoveries were now being made through mathematical equations, and he's saying that's not what science is supposed to be. The discoveries of the planets after Saturn were made through mathematical equations. Imagine that. You're making an equation about space, something that's based on other scientific theories, and then you're saying, oh, see, because the numbers line up this way, that must mean there's a planet right here, and we're going to call that planet Uranus. It's where they've always been aiming for. Or at least that's what I used to say, which is what I'm now apologizing for. But, a great scientific accomplishment. How could anyone question the moon landing? Neil Alden Armstrong, full name, part of a secret society, Freemasonry, founded by the Jesuits, created by the Jesuits and the Jesuit stronghold, the banking district of London, June 24th, 1717. But Neil Alden Armstrong, on the 201st day of the year, It's amazing. It's amazing when you think about it, how they even taught us growing up about the influence of the Catholic Church in science, distorting science, using their power to scare people, to kill people, to maintain understanding of the world the way they wanted it, right? And, the Jesuits in 201, it's their number in a gazillion different ways. It's in their recorded history that they were preserved by Catherine the Great with 201 Jesuits. We're in the time of the first Jesuit Pope who lives in Suite 201. Event 201 was the coronavirus pandemic simulation 1 month before the outbreak began in Wuhan, China. And the military World Games that started the same day as the Event 201 simulation are credited to the Jesuits and everything else, and a gazillion other things. The sitting president, his wife and daughter died on a road that equals 201. His son died at age 46, 201 days before the first Jesuit Pope's birthday, Pope Francis, who lives in Suite 201, whose birth name equals 201. It's just amazing that for years I thought any of this meant anything, Who cares that Joe Biden has a Jesuit priest whose name also equals 201, and he did the funeral for Beau Biden, who again died 201 days before Pope Francis' birthday, and then he also did Inauguration Day on 20/1 for number 46 after Beau Biden died at age 46. Who cares if Catholic equals 46 and there's 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament and JFK got his head blown off at age 46? Who cares if the election was exactly 46 weeks after the Pope's birthday, and we said a year in advance that would be why Biden was number 46. Obviously, that was all false. That's why Google just deletes the videos, takes down the blog posts. It's because it's all false. It's all meaningless. It's all just a big coincidence and me getting lucky over and over. So I just want to apologize again to almighty Google. And again, I want to point out, just because Sundar Pichai is the CEO of Google and the Alphabet Company, ABC123, it doesn't mean anything that Sundar Pichai's 123 forwards, or when you run it in reverse, also 201, and Google celebrates their birthday on September 27th, the day the Jesuits were recognized in Rome, because it's the day leaving 95 days left in the year, and their purpose was to counter the 95 Theses. Again, just personal apology to you, Sundar. I'm sure that's obviously just a coincidence. What else could it possibly be? A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, who cares? Jackson 5 song. So. Here. To finish off the apology, I want to play the Wired video that's really putting shame to people who question things, and rightfully so. And I also want you guys to notice how they start off, their argument here. I'm going to try not to interrupt. Here we go.
What if I were to tell you that the world is not in fact a sphere, but actually a flat disk? You'd probably point to photographs like these of Earth from space, and then I'd say, hey, if you want to trust the space agencies to tell you the truth, go ahead. But if you ask me, they're part of a conspiracy to lie to you. And then you'd say, what about the fact that if you fly in one direction long enough, you end up in the same place? Ha! That's just what the Illuminati wants you to think. That's why they control the flight patterns, to make you think you're going in a straight line when you're actually flying in a circle. This is Argument Club, a series about spotting bad arguments on the internet, where today we're talking about conspiracy theories. There's one out there for everybody. The JFK assassination, the fake moon land, the Freemasons, chemtrails, CIA mind control.
Here, let's actually, I don't want to interrupt, but I just want to go through it frame by frame. So he brought up JFK first. Again, again, I want to apologize for showing people these things because obviously they're totally false, but it doesn't mean anything that JFK visited with the Catholic Pope July 2nd, 1963, a span of 144 days from his assassination in Dealey Plaza, where Jesuit order equals 54 as well, and so does Dealey Plaza, like Ambassador Hotel, where his brother would be killed. And notice Ambassador Hotel's 153 and 54, like Jesuit order. And remember, Jesuit order was also 144, like how they say Robert Kennedy died at 1:44 in the morning on 6/6, when Robert Kennedy equals 66, And, even his initials, these remember, for RFK 35 and 46, like Catholic 35 and 46. JFK number 35, the first Catholic killed at age 46. Again, you guys can hear it as I present it. It doesn't make any sense. It's all a coincidence. It's random. It's random, right? This is all random. So I want to apologize to making Google, for having to make Google work so hard for all these years, deleting 10,000 plus videos. They've been doing the right thing, keeping, the masses, I guess, from even having a chance at reaching this work, So thank you for doing that too, Google. Not only am I sorry, thank you. Thank you. Because none of this makes any sense. I mean, who cares if there's 145 more chapters in the Catholic Old Testament than the Protestant, and this whole thing came out of the 95 Theses, and there's also 46 books in the Catholic Old Testament, Who cares if Joe Biden was officially confirmed as president-elect on 7/1, 353 days after his birthday, the 71st prime, the same day in history he was called senator-elect in 72, the year his wife and daughter died in a car crash on 201 Road. And then his son survived only to die while he was age 72, and Jesuit order 72, 201 days before the Pope's birthday. And then who cares that he was inaugurated on the 35th day of Pope Francis's age? Or that the first member of the Bush administration to step down after the insurrection was Elaine Chao, whose name equaled 145 and 46. All part of just a bunch of random coincidences, clearly. But then what did he have right after that?
Assassination. The fake moon.
Oh, the moon landing. We did that one already. 201, right? Coincidences. Then what?
The Freemasons.
Oh, the Freemasons. Yeah, created by the Jesuit order. Freemasons builders, Catholic Church with the best buildings everywhere on the Catholic calendar, speaking the Catholic language. You really start to think about it all. It's like, Freemasonries, you have to believe in God, religion. It's all about Solomon's Temple, Old Testament, Jesuits, Catholic, Jewish. There's no logical streamline, straight line you can follow here. None at all. Chemtrails, yeah. Where's all the insects? Can science explain to me where the hell all the insects are? I used to see spiders everywhere that spun webs. I never see that anymore. I haven't seen it for a long time. I used to flip over stones. There'd be all sorts of bugs, caterpillars, centipedes, potato bugs. Man, I was just at Token Tim's last weekend clearing out all this stuff that hasn't been touched for 10 years because we're going to build a greenhouse there. I think I'll start filming what we do at Token Tim's. I should have filmed this past weekend. But we're going to try to start growing a bunch of food. And I should probably apologize for that too, because growing your own food's not as good of an idea as buying from Bill Gates' farm, I'm sure. William Henry Gates, 201, main co-sponsor of Event 201. But then you got the CIA right here, and remember, one of the many nonsensical coincidences I've presented over the years is, you know, how the letters in Central Intelligence Agency, United States of America, add up to 201, and not only that, it was established exactly 201 days after the Pope's birthday. One of the most controversial popes in history, the Pope that stood silent to what was going on with Nazi Germany against the Jews, right? And remember, Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation leaders from Germany, who led a reformation against Catholicism and Judaism, because he said those were the corrupting forces of Europe. Again, you can't even talk about this in the modern day because, again, it's evil to talk about the evil history of the world, you know? We should only know the perspective Google wants us to have. And our government that's obviously so trustworthy. As we know, spending all the lives and trillions of dollars to find those WMDs that were surely over there was well worth it, right? Turns out there was zero threat. And, or I must be mistaken because somehow that doesn't fit in with the apology narrative. Anyhow, you know, what else has he got in his video?
Mind control, rigged election, Area 50.
He said mind control. Okay, that's something that the government has admitted to. So this is a conspiracy. So something the government has admitted to is a conspiracy theory. I have to think about that one. Hold on, he's going fast.
CIA mind control,
rigged elections. So Donald Trump announced he ran from the 58-story Trump Tower, won the 58th presidential election, hired the 58-year-old Steve Ray for Inauguration Day. And, you know, that day, I said look out for the Nationals to probably win the World Series in the time Trump's president, because Steve Ray was Nationals announcer. And again, I guess I got to apologize, for being right about that, because sometimes, you know, the things I say, and sometimes might be a lot of the time, almost all the time, the things I say that are going to happen from this knowledge I've been teaching about, they do happen, which you would think would make the work legitimate, but obviously since Google's censoring it and saying it's misinformation, obviously all I'm really doing is getting lucky and creating confirmation bias in something that's entirely conspiratorial nonsense, right, with no relevance in the world. So rigged elections, you know, I think I was the first person in the world to upload a video saying why it looked like Trump was going to be the next president the day of the first debate, where they said he was the 133rd richest man in the world in 2015 and president, White House, and government equal 133. Again, obviously that was nonsense. Biden said all year why he'd be number 46. Obviously that was nonsense. So these are all things that I owe Google an apology for. And here, let's hear what else is on his list.
Election, Area 51.
Oh, Area 51. You know, weird how in Gematria and the most pure cipher, again, just that most pure cipher, conspiracy is 51. You know, whoops, let me spell it right. Conspiracy 51, tinfoil hat 51. And then the most simple cipher, Federals 51. You know, it's just a coincidence that in D.C., it used to be called Rome on the Potomac, owned by Francis Pope, not to be confused with Pope Francis, and the Roman fasces are on the wall of the House of Representatives, and we learned that phrase in society, all roads lead to Rome. Apparently, you know, you put it all together, there's really just nothing there. But, you know, the other thing is Area 51, New Mexico, the 47th state. What year did New Mexico happen? Or the Roswell thing, 1947, and the supposed first official UFO sighting was right before that on the 47th parallel in Seattle at Mount Rainier, which happens to equal 47. You know, that most pure cipher again, Rainier 47. Again, I mean, obviously this guy's making better points by just listing off a bunch of things that people question that are obviously just conspiracy theory nonsense, as dumb as flat earth theory, right? And I got to apologize for, trying to pop the bubble on Google's big psyop of the flat earth theory, where I was explaining to people in 2015 that we're at a super crucial moment right now. There's still no justice for 9/11. They're showing you they're going to censor the hell out of us. There's not a lot of time to get out the word about the agendas going on and what needs to be stopped. And if you guys are going to start dedicating all your time to flat earth because Google's making it show up in all your feeds 24/7, 365, then you're going to be missing the ball of what needs to be done at this moment in history. That was me in 2015, and I just want to apologize for saying things like that and saying that Flat Earth was here to make us all look stupid and put us all in a group as all just people who will believe anything. And I just want to apologize for that because there haven't been a million more examples since then in videos like this trying to debunk things that people really need to think about by leading off with making fun of Flat Earth, right? And then making it seem like the people who believe Flat Earth are the people who also question these other things. So I want to apologize because obviously I was wrong to try and pop Google's PSYOP, because actually Google's PSYOP was needed because we needed to be delegitimized and made to look like fools because what we're talking about isn't important, you see.
Once you get going, it's easy to see secret plots and shadowy cabals everywhere you look. In all of these cases, people can point to evidence disputing some of these claims. The photos of Neil Armstrong on the moon.
And again, you guys, I brought up the random fact that JFK met with the Pope on July 2nd, a span of 144 days from his assassination. And again, the parallel with 35 and 46 in Catholic and Joe Biden, number 46, inaugurate on the Pope's 35th day of his age. I just want to make it all the more clear that, President Biden equaling 144 and 72, like Jesuit order who serves the Catholic Church, that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything, There's no real science behind that to prove that means anything. And then you can bring up that, Jesuit Georgetown simulated the election June 12th, 2020, 144 days before it happened. And in their simulation, Biden narrowly wins. Trump refuses to step down, which leads to deadly violence in the streets of America, which is all exactly what happened. But that doesn't mean that Georgetown's simulation caused any of that to happen. That's just a coincidence. You're taking these coincidences and saying these numbers mean something, which you invented because you read Manly P. Hall's book that existed 30 years before you were ever born. You know what I mean? I'm trying to argue the logic of a Google proponent and just make sure that people understand that is actually the truest argument, because that's the one that's allowed by big tech, which means it's the truest because they're only getting rid of misinformation, right? Okay. I hope I'm being crystal with this presentation. So don't forget that Confederate equals 201, like the Jesuit order, and then again, just one of those many other coincidences about how the Confederate statue of Albert Pike fell in D.C., the only Confederate statue in D.C., and then 201 days later at the Capitol insurrection, on 6/1, like the Civil War began in 1861, like how the Confederate flag flew, that day through D.C., right? This divisive story for a divided nation. And, again, I was taught as a child, united we stand, divided we fall. And, again, for even suggesting that, mainstream media has been trying to do that to us, Google's obviously set me straight by taking down those videos too. Misinformation. Just amazing how everything falls in the medical misinformation basket. So, remember, you guys, I actually did 2 videos on January 6th before it happened, showing why it was going to be a big Confederate ritual, and there'd probably be death reported with the incident because it was part of the simulation at Jesuit Georgetown, and all of that did happen. But again, I want to thank YouTube and Google for taking down my videos on that were put out before it happened for medical misinformation, because that did happen as well. They were 2 of my best viewed videos at the time of it happening, so you're like, wow, this is amazing. But it was good that Google took those down because it actually wasn't amazing. It was just the rantings of a conspiracy nut who's putting out baseless information that's just all based in coincidence. And it doesn't really have predictive ability, even though I've been able to accurately predict almost everything for the last 8 years. What it actually has is just a strong power for, coincidence, actually. That's what it has. It's the science of coincidence. So, do you guys want to watch more of the documentary on how Stephen Hawking learned to talk by pressing one button? Here we go.
Solution to try and express that humanness, which was so much a part of it, to make it easier for Stephen to express himself as a warm human being. And that coughing sound in the background is not somebody doubting it incredibly, but my poor dog over here who's got a bit of a cough.
Right from the beginning, what we were told was the absolute minimum in terms of what a person can do in terms of interaction with a computer, which is press one switch. So, as his condition deteriorated, they found other ways for him to control that switch.
And what was nice about the solution was that Arun had analyzed the problem of somebody who has very, very little movement left. We basically took the ability of a computer gadget, a mouse, the clicking of the button, and took one single click and looked at how many things we could make the computer do with that. And we could do 3 things with it. One was to sense a click, the other was to sense the lack of a click, and the third was to sense the length of the click. So we took those 3 aspects, and from it we made the ability to create complete sentences very, very quickly. Things I told Arun on the phone is that this is what we have to build into the software. That it's not enough to be solving the problem of using very little motor ability when you have almost no motor ability left. To create anything on the computer is a huge problem, but if we just solve that problem, it's not enough. We have to be able to maximize that.
As we watch, I just want to apologize for the old me. The old me would, point out the coincidental owls on the pillow next to this guy who, back in the day I would say was making a mockery of the audience, but obviously he's a very sincere, compassionate man who just wanted to bring us the obvious truth. And what lovely owls on the pillow. Here we go.
Ability to say silly things, because Stephen likes to say silly things.
What's the most common misconception about your work?
People think I'm a Simpsons character.
And speaking of coincidences, they just got to bring the Simpsons into it, right? Simpsons. Yeah.
See, the voice wasn't something that we did. The original voice that he had, that was the text-to-speech output of our deck talk box. That was the technology of 30 years ago. So that is the characteristic voice that he has. It's actually text-to-speech.
And it was one of the very first voices developed for computers to enunciate human voices. Almost identical voice was used in the Doctor Who program. Exterminate!
Oh boy.
However difficult life can be, teachers have always been there, behind the scenes, showing us the way forward.
We tried to tell Stephen was that he could get away from his Dalek voice, But the fact is that's what he chose to do. It was also possible for him to make other choices, including getting a good approximation of what his original voice had been. But the software was changing. And what happened was the development tool we had used, which was Visual Basic 6, and we were developing this, as I told you, as an open source project, abruptly, without almost no notice at all, Microsoft stopped the development of Visual Basic 6. That was it. They just dropped it. Basically, it meant we'd have to start all over again from scratch and write eLocutor again. I think it's very understandable that he was uncomfortable with the idea of shifting out of Windows.
What was noticeable was his humor and how his face changes, how expressive his face is. And he's a very kind man. It was a pleasure meeting him. And when one realized how much the person is able to do, although he's so restricted, that is in itself an inspiration. I mean, on his website there was a page earlier which described his disability, in which he says that people ask me about what it is like to live with this disability, and he says, frankly, I don't think about it a lot, because there are few things that I want to do that it does not allow me to do. So this was, this optimistic attitude was really what was amazing. He was probably in his 20s when the disease was first detected, and because they thought it was a very virulent case of the disease, they told him he may not have long to live. Now imagine, he lived 50 years and was optimistic and did so much work, and right up to the end he was working.
He didn't think much about it, huh? Wonder why. Guy was nearly a vegetable. And again, just growing up in my lifetime, he was always the guy who looked like a vegetable, getting all this critical acclaim with a computerized voice, supposedly like reading from his throat or his head putting out. I mean, it's just like, as a child, I looked at this and was very doubtful. I was like, I don't know, I don't know about this. And again, I mean, as you get older, it's just like, okay, look at what they continue to do to us. Or again, sorry guys, this is the way I used to think. I don't think like this anymore. Google set me straight, as you can tell. But yeah, I like how that guy said he didn't really think much about it. And then how about that part about how he was doing his work right up until the day he died, huh? Old me might have thought maybe he didn't go out naturally on Pi Day and all. And but yeah, I mean, you guys must see where I'm coming from. Why would we ever question science? Coronavirus, everything seems above board, right? Got a few deaths in some nursing homes. Let's go 24/7, 365 coverage of how scary the latest illness, originally coined in 1968 as seasonal flu. Let's just go overboard with the coverage and talk about how scary it is 24/7 and just say this is the science. This is the science, I don't think mainstream science really leaves anywhere to question when I really think about it. And again, I used to also say this about science. I mean, I used to look at this and say, man, there must not be many people in the U.S. who passed physics class. I used to say this, when I was 18, when 9/11 happened, and in the many years after, I used to say, man, I know physics was tough for a lot of people, but man, people must have really been failing that class all over this nation for a lot of decades, because had they passed, physics, they would know that what they witnessed with their eyes on 9/11 was impossible. It violated like every law of physics there was. And again, let's not blame science. Let's just say that maybe Google hasn't done enough censorship on the topic of magic yet, because perhaps that's what overcame science that day. That might be the one thing, if you think about it. Because how could science be so perfect, but then on the day of 9/11, just the laws of physics didn't apply? How do you explain it? How do you explain it? You guys understand why it was physically impossible, right? Because never on any other day in the history of this world has the same thing happened to steel frame buildings. Never on any other day except for September 11, 2001 has a steel framed building fell from a fire. And, for the wise guy who thinks he's a scientific know-how, he'll say, well, planes hit those buildings, so it's a little bit different. But what about the third building that fell that day, Building 7? The one that had all the federal court documents for the case against Enron and WorldCom. What happened to that building? No plane hit it. And, the damage to it was not as bad as some of the damage to the other surrounding buildings, but it just collapsed in perfect free fall. Physically impossible. Without, when I say physically impossible, I mean based on the official story, which is very unscientific. But, yeah, I used to say that people didn't understand physics, but maybe it's just, maybe I had the wrong perspective. Maybe there were things I wasn't considering. So it's weird how the one building, the plane hit the corner of it, right? And like, just the model would be very simple to do. Build an object similar, and through one of the objects, just smash off the whole corner and chunk, and then make it so that the rest of the structure right there is slowly melting away, and see if what happens is the whole building just comes down in a pile of dust, or if what happens is the part that's weakened eventually tips off and snaps off and falls, which is not what happened with the World Trade Centers, but what should have happened based on, what you would expect from a scientific analysis. And, but yeah, somehow I need to work this into my apology, because I've been talking about how the science just doesn't add up with 9/11, and obviously, the only thing that really matters about science is what Google says matters. So, yeah, science. It's there when they want it. It's not there when they don't want it. It's so interesting. So interesting. So, as someone who always thought they appreciated science, now that I've been corrected by Google and they've let me know that, I'm violating science and medical information from Switzerland, that's the real science, I just feel like I've been so ignorant and just, misled so many people clearly, And I mean, as we know in history, tyrants, that isn't what they've done, right? They haven't burned books and gotten rid of information and destroyed historical records. That never happened. They never did that in the interest of covering up, something that goes against their interests, right? Tyrants don't behave that way. They don't burn books and get rid of information that goes against their narratives. I think I might just stay on here until Google calls me up and gives me a new position at the Ministry of Truth. If you can't beat them, join them, right? So, anyway, apologies to Sundar Pichai, all the good young people at Google building the algorithms to censor all the conspiracy quacks. Thank you guys for doing your duty to humanity. Thank you for valuing freedom and free speech. Except for from conspiracy theorist quacks. You guys are the best, truly. You don't deserve any harm. None at all. It'd be totally unjustified if, a Timothy McVeigh type rolled up to Google's HQ. It would be totally unjustified. So, apologies for even putting the thought out there. But yeah, you guys, again, you heard it from the best. And you know what? I think I forgot to finish this guy's video, didn't I? So hold on. Let's go out with somebody who's just a lot more honest, a lot more straightforward, a lot more right to the point about how silly conspiracy theories are. And let's let him finish this video. You know what? We'll take it from the top. Here we go.
What if I were to tell you that the world is not in fact a sphere, but actually a flat disk? You'd probably point to photographs like these of Earth from space. And then I'd say, hey, if you want to trust the space agencies to tell you the truth, go ahead. But if you ask me, they're part of a conspiracy to lie to you. And then you'd say, what about the fact that if you fly in one direction long enough, you end up in the same place? Ha! That's just what the Illuminati wants you to think. That's why they control the flight patterns, to make you think you're going in a straight line when you're actually flying in a circle. This is Argument Clip, a series about spotting bad arguments on the internet, where today we're talking about conspiracy theories. There's one out there for everybody. The JFK assassination, the fake moon land, the Freemasons, chemtrails, CIA mind control, rigged election, Area 51. Once you get going, it's easy to see secret plots and shadowy cabals everywhere you look. In all of these cases, people can point to evidence disputing some of these claims. The photos of Neil Armstrong on the moon, the Warren Commission report, the studies that keep showing that vaccines work. To which you will inevitably hear, you think the people who faked the moon landing couldn't gin up a couple of phony photos? Wake up, sheeple! And there's the problem. Any evidence that would seem to contradict the conspiracy is further proof of the conspiracy. It cannot be disproven, or to use a term from science, it is not falsifiable. A hypothesis is falsifiable if you could imagine a way to prove it wrong through observation. So let's say I've only ever seen white swans, and so I assume that all swans are white. This is a falsifiable claim, because if I were ever to see a black swan, it would be disproven. Pretty simple, really. Philosopher Karl Popper came up with the idea of falsifiability in his 1934 treatise, Logik der Forschung. He was German. He was trying to figure out why Albert Einstein's theory of relativity felt more rigorous than, say, Karl Marx's theory of history, or Sigmund Freud's theories of psychoanalysis. Marx's and Freud's followers pointed out that those...
Is there a commonality between those three people? There is. It's a homework assignment. What's the commonality between those three?
Those theories could explain pretty much anything that ever happened. Open the newspaper and you could interpret almost every story through the lens of Marx's ideas. As for Freud, you could explain just about every action someone took as a response to their parents, or repression, or sublimation. But to Popper, this wasn't a feature of these theories, but a bug. These theories had explanatory power, but no predictive power. Einstein, on the other hand, made specific predictions about, for instance, how light traveled. Predictions that, if disproven, would invalidate his entire theory. Popper said that's what separated science from pseudoscience. As he wrote, every good scientific theory is a prohibition. It forbids certain things to happen. And the more a theory forbids, the better it is. It sounds strange, but good scientists and technologists actually spend a lot of time trying to disprove their theories, not prove them. Astro Teller, who runs X, Alphabet's fanciful moonshot division that builds self-driving cars and Wi-Fi delivering hot air balloons, says he rewards engineers who prove that ideas won't work.
That's it. That's the secret. Run at all the hardest parts of the problem first. Get excited and cheer. Hey, how are we going to kill our project today?
Maybe you've spotted the sticky part here. The logical endpoint of falsifiability is that nobody can ever completely prove anything. You can never know if someone won't someday discover something that invalidates everything you thought was true. Like if you're Isaac Newton, who totally locked down the laws of physics until quantum mechanics showed he was mostly wrong. But that doesn't mean what the cousin you muted on Facebook thinks it means. Calling evolution just a theory doesn't mean it's wrong or a guess. A theory has a structure that allows for dispositive evidence. It could potentially be proven wrong someday if new evidence refutes it. So far, evolution has withstood every challenge, which has only made the theory more powerful. Falsifiability...
I don't even know what to say, man. I mean, is that true? The first proof of evolution was Piltdown Man. So 41 years of academic, top falsehood is proof that, there was never anything to weaken the theory. The first thing that was ever taught as proof was admitted as being false. And I bet you this guy who made this video doesn't even know that. He probably doesn't even know about Piltdown Man because it wasn't taught in his generation. So, and if you look into Piltdown Man, I mean, it really is pretty sick. It was taught as proof that that's why white people were a superior race, because that's where evolution began, in the UK, where the sun never sets on Britain. But yeah, I mean, yeah. Why doesn't Wired? Why don't you guys have me on? Debate me. Debate the online conspiracy theorist Zachary K. Hubbard. Let's go that quick list and let's really talk about it. What's his theory on explaining what's going on in the skies? You know, it wasn't tic-tac-toe patterns every day when we grew up. There used to be insects everywhere. There's a lot less. I mean, something's going on. You know, he made the quote about how vaccines definitely work. Okay. Do things that definitely work? Is it like everything in this world, good and bad? Is there other things going on? I know that there's a lot more unexplained illness in children, and there's a lot more vaccines too than there was just not that long ago. You know, but you're not even allowed to question that, right? Right, Google? And again, let me thank you for doing that, because we shouldn't be asking any questions, you know, especially when we don't even have the answers for them yet, right? How dare we ask questions that we still don't know the answers to, according to Google and guys like this. But here, let's let him finish. He's got 20 seconds.
It doesn't weaken the theory of evolution. It strengthens it. And the opposite is also true. If a theory is not falsifiable, it's not worth debating. So remember that the next time your cousin wants to argue that lizard aliens beneath the White House run international banking. That's probably just the chemtrails talking.
Yeah, you could remind him about things like that. You know, those ideas come from people like David Icke, who are promoted in the mainstream. Or you could, next time you bring it up, you could show him, you know, coronavirus 56, COVID vaccine 56, and Gavin Newsom 56. And you could show him how Gavin Newsom, when he became the first governor to lock down his nation, or his state, might as well be a nation, it's so big, California, he said in 8 weeks, 56% of California will have coronavirus. That's why I'm locking down the state tonight. 8 weeks is 56 days. And the governors that got the most attention were him and Cuomo, the 56th governor of New York, and what they both have in common is they're members of the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuit order. And again, they were very much the governor faces throughout much of the pandemic. And look, I mean, you've had the Cuomo scandal since then. You've had the Gavin Newsom recall by the numbers. And of course, all these things are coincidences and, you know, conspiracy nonsense. Or are they? And, you know, it's funny how the same patterns all over everything, all throughout history. And if you're going, well, how would Disney sync up with science and Pluto? Again, the answer is simple. You see how Society of Jesus is 79 as well? Look at Knights Templar. Knights Templar, 79, Society of Jesus, these entities that both serve the Catholic Church. Disney, member of De Molay, named after the Knights Templar leader who was burned at the stake on Friday the 13th. You know, there's a Disney actor dead right now at 79. Shout out to Neo the hacker who caught it. Old Yeller. Let's see. Tommy Kirk, child actor from Old Yeller, has died at 79. Tommy Kirk, Disney child star in Old Yeller and the Shaggy Dog, dies at 79. It's about dogs. Pluto. But yeah, you just start to recognize what's going on, you know. Again, murders got that 79. The ABC murders, the Agatha Christie story on killing by the code of ABC 1, 2, 3, 56, and 79, like Society of Jesus. You know, all these great scientific minds dying in these numerical rituals. But surely it's not because of anything what I'm showing, you know. The phrase, your number's up, obviously related to something entirely different. And, yeah, you know. Oh. You know, just for one more coincidence. This guy's name, let me see if I added it up right. I have, because I'm such a wacky conspiracy theorist, I like to add up the words in my head. It's good practice. Jason Tans, do you see his name? If I'm doing it right with the most simple cipher, his name is 120. Let me see. It's interesting. It is 120. Okay. Illuminati is 120. And didn't he make a few jokes there about the old Illuminati? And, you know, strangely enough, there was an Illuminati in history established just before the American Revolution, May 1st, 1776, by Adam Weishaupt, whose name equals 51 in the most pure cipher, like Rome's 51, and the Jesuits are agents of Rome. And Rome had a big interest in the founding of the country, this new growing nation, that was trying to escape it. But isn't that funny, though, that the guy who they choose for the video to make fun of these people who question the events of history, who tend to be flat earthers, and again, that's a true stereotype at this point, sadly. Almost everybody in the community seemed to want to take the flat earth bait. But isn't it funny, though, that his name is just like that? Let me apologize for that last segment, too. I'm almost going back to my old ways. But yeah, anyway, that's probably a long enough apology. And again, I just want to get out of all this stuff out of my system, all these coincidences. But yeah, just remember, you guys, ignorance is strength. Intelligence is idiocy. And just keep believing too, right? Just keep believing. Ignore that the word lie is right in the middle of the awkwardly spelled word believe. Just keep believing the authority. They're always looking out for you. Your pastor cares about you. Your school principal cares. Your politician cares. Your president, your favorite nightly news anchor, they all care about you. Just keep believing the authority. I've even seen Google's commercials that I used to doubt, but now since I know Google's the almighty beacon of truth, those commercials about when it comes to COVID, there's just 3 things: trust the vaccine, trust the authorities, ignore the internet. Obviously it's weird how these, now that I think about it, it's like, wait a minute. But anyway, we're going to leave it there for now, you guys. Some people might have seen better apologies, but I tried my best. It's a tough topic, so anyway, we'll leave it there. And until next time.